Hi, everyone. Welcome to the April 2026 Duende live stream. I'm very excited, very glad to be here. I'm happy. It's, like I said, it's April. It is spring here in the Northern Hemisphere. So I'm enjoying the weather. I'm hoping you're able to enjoy the weather. If you are not able to enjoy it at a bare minimum, you're going to be able to enjoy this live stream because we are geeking out. We are talking SAML. This is a good time. Uh, okay, I'm sorry. I clicked the wrong button there. All right, that was my mistake. Let's go ahead and move on. Uh, so let's go ahead and move to the actual slides. Again, technical difficulties; these things happen. Anyway, so I am very excited because we're going to be talking to a guy I know. He's great. His name is Anders. I like to call him a fountain of knowledge. I love to ask him questions whenever possible because he's always able to answer my questions in detail. Now you will have a chance to ask him a bunch of questions. We have a live chat right here in YouTube, so you can just go ahead, ask some questions. We will have dedicated Q&A time at the end of the stream, but if you have any questions while we're going through it, please feel free to ask, and we'll go ahead and ask at a moment that is that works out well for the stream. But you don't have to ask only questions about the direct topic. There are other people from Duende looking at the chat there, so feel free to ask, and maybe you'll get an answer sooner instead of something directly on the stream. Now, one of the other awesome benefits of being on of doing this live stream on YouTube is that it is being recorded. Those questions are also in the recording, right? So you can kind of see those a little bit later. But this also means that you can view some of this a little bit later. I mentioned that I really like talking to Anders because I will just uh, get a really long answer from him sometimes, which is great. I love all the added context. It adds history. I love it all, but I always wish I can rewind. Now, unfortunately, that's not a thing I can do in real life, but hey, that's a thing we can go ahead and do with this live stream. So that part is awesome, and I love that. All right. Now, the last thing that I do want to ask you is please, or if you want, it's your call, feel free to like this video, hit that notification bell, subscribe to our channel. That way, you never miss out on anything, right? Any of these videos, any of these live streams that we do from Duende, talking about identity, talking about sometimes just C Sharp, right? The .NET platform, all that fun stuff. Talking about identity server, right? Our products, all of that stuff. So feel free to go ahead and click any combination of those three buttons that you want, and there we go. Then you can go ahead and enjoy future videos from us. All right, now here is the agenda. Here's the plan for this live stream. We're going to be talking SAML. Probably already saw that in the title, right? And we're also going to talk, hey, why are we adding SAML now to Identity Server, right? It's been a long time. Identity Server has, for the life of a product, always been more of an OIDC sort of thing. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. And then we are going to do what is always my favorite part of any kind of stream. We're going to be looking at some code. So we have a sample code application. This is early alpha code. So some things will be changing by the time things make it to your hands. But we're going to be looking at that. We're going to talk about how SAML works also, right? We're going to be looking at things step by step. So if you've never done anything with SAML before, that demo is also going to be a bit of a teaching moment. And then, like I said, at the end, we are going to have a great Q&A set amount of time. So you can go ahead and ask your questions. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and introduce Anders, our guest. Hey, Anders, welcome to the stream.
Hey, thanks a lot. Great to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm always glad to talk to you no matter what. Now we do have a little bit of a bio here. I love talking about you and saying that I know a guy who is incredibly smart and all that because part of it makes me, I think, sound a little bit better. Uh, but you have quite a history with with identity itself, also with Duende itself, right? Identity server as a product, you've been working with it for a very long time. And you also have your own consulting company, Sustainsis, right?
Yep.
Now, Sustainsis is one of the premier partners of ours here at Duende, right? So you work with a lot of our same customers, and you do a lot of identity-related work, right?
Yeah, so when I introduce myself, if people ask me what I do for a living, I usually say that I'll build login buttons, because that is a fairly succinct to the point thing. And on the surface, it might not look that complicated. When I tried to explain to one of my kids what I do, I said that I build login buttons. He said, that can't be hard. You just click login and then you're logged in, right? So, Al, sorry, but obviously our job is not hard. But we all know that there's a lot of things happening underneath the hood to make the login button look simple but still be secure. And that's what I've spent over a decade working on. I'm based in Stockholm. Saw someone in the chat being from Sweden as well, which is great to see someone else from this part of the world around. And then I'm founder of Sustainsis consultancy company based in Stockholm. We do both consultancy, working with identity server implementation, etc. We also have created and maintain the Sustainsis SAML 2 library. So I looked back, the first commit in that repository, I made it in 2013. So it's 13 years ago since I first started working on SAML, and seems to continue for at least 13 more years.
Awesome. Yeah. So you've been in it. You have I like to say you have battle scars, right? You've had a number of engagements with this. Yeah. I also love your story about being a login button builder, which is a little bit of a spoiler, I think, for the demo code we're going to be showing off a little bit later, because it's all around a single button. It's great. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into it, right? Let's talk about why we're here today. So, Anders, I love the way that you describe it. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask you, what is SAML?
SAML is short for Security Search and Markup Language, but what it really means is when you hit that login button in one application, and that application want to defer the login to be done by another party, an identity provider, SAML is the handshake, how you securely request from the other site that, hey, can you log the user in, and how you securely get the answer back. And there's a ton of things you need to think about to design such a handshake, and that's why we have these standardized protocols where a lot of really smart people have thought really hard about it and created something, and then some security researcher has broken it, and these smart people fixed it and hardened it, and that's why we should rely on the standards when building these kind of things. And with a bit of more history, so I think SAML is a milestone for single sign-on protocols, because it was the first protocol that was built only on web-based standards. So we've had the possibility to use a single sign-on or a shared username, password, or authentication mechanism for long. I'm old enough to remember when the web first came around and you had Windows integrated authentication as the easy thing to make it work. And under the hood, that uses the NTLM or Kerberos protocols. The problem with those is that the browser need to have intimate knowledge of it. If you use Windows integrated sign-on, the browser need to have probably both NTLM and Kerberos support built in and do the handshake with the provider, etc., crypto keys, tickets, whatnot under the hood. While SAML, to a browser, SAML is just web pages, a few redirects, and forms that are posted. So it was really clever that they created something that could be run in any web browser without additional support having to be added to the browser itself.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know some of that early stuff was very much the platform specific kind of thing. And I think we take some of this stuff for granted nowadays, right? we've talked about identity server essentially being OIDC, and just being able to use that everywhere is great. But that I'm sure wouldn't exist without SAML, right? Standing on the shoulders of giants, being battle tested, etc. Right? Whatever phrase you want to go ahead and use, we can go ahead and apply to things.
Yeah, and also OpenID Connect. I think the specification is from 2014, so it's almost a decade later than SAML 2. And OpenID Connect, in many ways, is SAML 2 done right, if I dare to say that, because SAML, while extremely useful, it is a successful protocol and it's extremely useful, but to implement SAML is a bit too hard, and there's been a bit too many security issues because of how the security model works. It's hard to do correct. So it is obvious when reading the OpenID Connect spec that the people writing that had extensive experience with SAML and decided to not repeat the mistakes. But still, SAML 2, if you use a hardened existing library or product for it, don't roll your own, then it's perfectly fine to use, and it solves the problem. And I think that's also why we still have SAML, because it was first, and it took the market share. And I mean, for just a simple single sign-on solution, it works. It solves the problem. So why invest in the effort to migrating to OpenID Connect if you have something working?
Yeah, exactly. I completely understand that. And that actually kind of moves a little bit into this next slide, right? Talking about why SAML still matters. So I love the way that you worded that, right? Like, hey, SAML as a protocol is still, it is very secure. But part of it is, I guess we would say, the developer experience can be improved, can be better, right? If you maybe make a mistake on the configuration side of things, some of the setup, you can run into some issues in comparison to OIDC, but it's everywhere, right? People love using it, right? As we have on the slide right here, right? Load bearing. I love that phrase. It is load bearing. So many different organizations use it, right? Enterprise, governments, healthcare, academic research. If you work in any one of those industries, or if you want to work with one of those industries, right? Maybe you're a consultant organization, a company that makes a SaaS tool, and you want to be able to sell to one of them, you have to use SAML, right? Like that's essentially become a something along the lines of an industry standard. Yeah, and I also like the bottom bullet point that we have down there, right? Like what are the things that SAML does that OIDC isn't able to do yet? And I'm sure there are reasons, for why the newer standard in comparison isn't able to do is certain things that SAML can't do. I don't know if there's anything you can speak to, Anders, around like, hey, what are certain scenarios maybe where you would prefer SAML because you just can't do that yet with OIDC?
I would say the main first, a war story, a scenario where OpenID Connect was not an option. It was a project where we were implementing a single sign-on solution for multiple applications, some new, freshly built application, but also integrating some legacy applications. And we had this one application that was business critical for this organization, and they had lost the source code. But it could do SAML. And we could change some parameters. So what we had to do was just to say, okay, we can change the URL of or the entity ID of the SAML provider. We can enter the SSO endpoint and the certificate. That's it. Everything else we had to make our SAML provider accommodate to that old solution. And I mean, we managed to get it running, but it was a perfect example of the legacy side where we had to integrate with an application that we had absolutely no possibilities to change except for these 3 configuration items. And then we could adapt from the provider side, identity provider side. But other The large thing that I think SAML still can do that is not yet mature in OpenID Connect is large-scale federations. The most impressive one is EduGain, which is a way for students and staff at universities to be able to access Wi-Fi at different universities around the world. So if you have a valid student login at one of the participating universities, you could go to any other campus of out of thousands of campuses and just sign on and get Wi-Fi using your own account back at your own university, from your own university. And that works through a federation model. Imagine if you have a couple of thousand a few thousand universities, and all of them would have to do a point-to-point integration. That's millions of integrations that you would need to set up. So the idea here is instead that everyone becomes a member of this federation where everyone trusts each other. And it is mature and deployed and works for SAML 2, although it struggles somewhat when you get these scales with thousands of participants. There is an upcoming standard for OpenID Connect, which on the one hand is built in a way that it will scale beyond the limits of the SAML 2 solution, but at the cost of being horribly more complicated. I think that SAML 2 federations might likely be the last thing that SAML sticks around with because it's fairly simple to get implemented. And then we have the other things where SAML 2, where OpenID Connect is still kind of catching up. OpenID Connect was designed on the internet for consumer-facing application, and it has matured and evolved into banking, healthcare. We have standards such as FAPI, etc. While SAML came from the other direction. SAML had all of these things built in from the start.
Got it. Yeah, and that's one of those things that I think from the outside looking in, you see some standards and you think, well, hey, why can't this do that? Like, well, because the original goal was this thing, right? You're saying, hey, I guess if the original goal for OIDC was web sign in and that kind of stuff, that it gets easier from that side of things versus for SAML, it's easier from the perspective of having a federated ecosystem, essentially, right?
Yeah, and there are some more nuances for key management, for example, where the OpenID Connect security model essentially says that we just assume HTTPS is safe and secure. We trust HTTPS, while SAML 2 have key distribution mechanisms, etc., and models that are built for scenarios where more hardened environments, where you may not, for example, be perfectly sure. You don't want to build your security, I would say, on top of just assume that HTTPS is correct.
Okay, and that actually kind of makes a lot of sense, I think, with some of these those industries that we're talking about up here in the first bullet point, right? Government agencies, healthcare agencies, right? They they have regulatory reasons for wanting that extra bit of security. So awesome. It makes a lot of sense. So hey, let's go ahead and move on just a little bit here, and just kind of visualize how this SAML support that will be coming to Duende IdentityServer is essentially going to work. And you can kind of see in the image right here, right? IdentityServer is right there, right in the center, and you can go ahead and get your OIDC token just like before, right? Nothing new. And we're adding on yet another way to go ahead and get some information about a user after they sign in. In this case, if they're signing in with SAML, we get a SAML assertion, right? So different terminology. Conceptually, it's the same, right? Andrews, would you say conceptually ends up being pretty much same concept at least? Feel free to correct me. It's okay.
No, it sounds perfectly right.
Awesome. All right. So I guess we also have one of these questions too, right? Hey, why now? We kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, and I think we should go ahead and just kind of answer this specifically from the Duende side, right? Duende is a company. Hey, why is SAML 2.0 support being added to IdentityServer after all these years? It's been OIDC specific for this entire time? Well, so the short answer is, and you can probably gather some of this from previous slides, right? Is, we can't completely serve certain industries, right? Like certain enterprise, government, healthcare, educations without SAML, right? Like I said earlier, if you are working in one of those industries, or if you want to work with one of those industries, you need to be able to work with SAML. And in the past, before, or I mean, honestly, even still today, if you want to be able to work with SAML and you have your identity server product already, set up and running, it's working great, but you want to be able to add that, you need to either build it yourself or add a third-party extension. And so, um, the longer answer comes down to Duende itself. Us as a company, Duende is expanding, right? So the way that we like to think about it is you have your foundation, you have identity server, it's already set up, right? Token issuance, authentication, session management, all that stuff. It's running in your infrastructure. It's a thing you control, right? It's yours, right? And over time, your requirements grow, right? So you started with an application that's running under your set of requirements, but now, hey, all of a sudden, we do need to have support for SAML, and that's great, right? It's always awesome when us as developers, our applications can mature. We can support more use cases. We can work on cool new problems, right? That's always fun. But then, as your requirements grow, all of a sudden, you need SAML SSO for whatever reasons there are, right? Like I said, you need to work with a new partner, new customer, or something to that effect, right? So that is why SAML 2.0 support is being added in a future version of Identity Server. So that add-on will come out in the near future, right? So same vendor, same roadmap, same support contract, right? And personally, as a developer, my favorite part, same programming model, right? We all essentially know how to work with Identity Server. Once you worked with it for a little bit, right? So being able to use that same programming model for just tacking on and adding on SAML, that's great, right? That's awesome.
And also, I mean, I've obviously been talking about SAML to Brock and Dominic Bayer for a decade by now, since I first got to know them, and it's always been something that, yeah, it would be good to add it in the future, but it was always a question about how to support it long term, etc. And it looks like Duende is now in a place where there are more people that they Duende have the resources now to add this and support it long term. And I mean, I guess that's part of the benefit of Duende going commercial, is that things like this can be added.
Yeah, exactly, right? Having the resources to be able to do something like that. Yeah, definitely. So so let's go ahead and look at this table right here. And I think as developers, working on our applications, we can kind of see ourselves in this chart, right? The different things that we're working on. And when we say, that middle paragraph, when we say best protocol, what we mean is, hey, this is the thing you probably want to use for your use case, right? There's no best for everything, right? But if you're working on specific applications for, hey, maybe you have your let's look at that very second to last one. You have a B2C consumer application, right? Customers are logging in, but that application is working with maybe a bank or something, right? And so your application will need to have maybe some SAML to interact with that bank in some way, right? So it's not just that you need the one protocol for your application. Like, there are many use cases for having multiple protocols within your application. Yep. All right. So we've talked about SAML, right? We've hyped it up. We've talked about all the good about it. We've asked Andrew some questions. I love that. But now it's my favorite time, code time. So let's go ahead and bring up our C# code that we have right here. So, all right. So we have a sample demo application. Now, I've said it before. I'm gonna keep saying it, but I want to say it again right now. early alpha level code, right? Some of this stuff will be changing. Some of the stuff I already know will be changing. But this is the early stuff, and a lot of those changes are going to be along the lines of developer experience, right? Making things a little bit better for us as developers to work with, right? And make this even more closer to the model that we're used to working with as far as identity server goes.
And that's actually something I think would be interesting to get also for people listening in the chat is what existing things do you have, existing deployments where you want to add SAML 2 capabilities to better understand where what existing customizations, etc., should also in best case be seamlessly starting working when SAML 2 is added.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely love to know kind of how that ends up working. Yeah, so here let's go ahead and look at some of this code, and maybe we'll even answer some of that a little bit for some people. So over here on the right hand side, we're in Visual Studio. Notice we have two applications. We have our SAML IDP and our SAML service provider. So if you want to think of how these work, right, the SAML IDP, the identity provider, this is the application that's hosting identity server. Our other application, SAML service provider, you can think of that more as like a client, right? That is the application that is connecting to our identity server.
I mean, it is a client. It's just that that's something I think it's funny is every standard in this space has invented their own terminology, and sometimes they got it right. I think SAML got identity provider right. That's a simple, easy to understand thing. While calling the client application for a service provider, I don't think that is the best name. Client is much easier, as OAuth and OpenID Connect uses. On the other hand, they couldn't reuse identity provider, so they invited OP. So why can't people just use good ideas from each other instead of reinventing their own?
I'm with you. Yeah, so service provider is a client, just different terminology. I'm with you. Naming is hard. It's very, very hard to name things right. All right, so here we are. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So a lot of this code is going to look pretty familiar to you if you're used to working with identity server, specifically if you're used to working with some of our samples, right? Because we are also adding certain things, in memory, things that you probably won't always add it directly from memory. You won't always have things as hard coded, especially test users, things like that, right? But these 4 lines right here, these are the lines where we go ahead and add SAML support to the identity server. So let's go ahead and talk about them, right? So this first line is where we're going to go ahead and load the service provider certificate. I'm going to scroll down just to show you what this looks like. It's very bare bones. Again, great for a demo because we're just going to go ahead and load a certificate from a hard-coded path. That's it. That's all we're doing.
And what we're loading here is the certificate of the public key of the service provider to be able to validate things that are incoming and signed by the service provider.
Yes, exactly. So that's where we're passing to the next line right here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and let's go to that definition right here. Again, I want to remind everyone, early alpha code, a lot of this is going to improve from the developer experience. That's why some of this might feel a little bit clunky at points, but I just want to call out, the comparison of this SAML service provider. If we scroll up a few lines, we have the new client, right? The thing we're used to working with in identity server, very similar concept, right? We're setting up some properties. We have some URIs, everything that we're going to go ahead and use. Similar concept down here. Now, I do want to mention those certs that we loaded, right? So, Anders, I think you can explain that a lot better, right? So we have essentially 2 different certs. We're passing in, we've chosen for a demo to pass in the first one as null. And the purpose of that is to, we want to disable requiring signing the auth requests. And that's to help our demo for some of the for some of what we're going to be showing a little bit later. But the signing certs, Anders, if you want to speak a little bit to the purpose of that, right? How those are shared between the identity provider and service provider.
Yeah, and as I'll say, this is an early preview, and actually, I don't think even this is merged all the code you're referring it. It's a pull request, isn't it? That we picked the latest available development effort because we wanted to show you the latest parts. But it means it's sometimes a bit in between. But essentially in SAML 2, you have two certificates or keys that are important. Actually, the certificate itself is not that important. It's just that a certificate is a standard file format to handle keys. And in SAML 2, both the identity provider and the client or service provider do sign messages. Obvious thing is that when we make get a response from the identity provider to who is logged in, that is signed. That's the basis of the whole security for the SAML response containing a SAML assertion. But we also have cases where the provider or the client need to sign things. And that's where the signing certificates come in, especially logout uses signed messages in SAML 2. There's also a possibility, as you can see on line 59, to encrypt assertions. And if we, from the identity provider, if you want to encrypt something and only the client or SP should be able to decrypt it, we encrypt it using the public key of the provider. And then or of the SP, and then the SP can use its private key to decrypt.
Okay. Yeah. So certificate matters there, and sharing the certificate too, right? Essential, or the sharing the public key at least.
Exactly.
Does
Each
matter,
one
right?
should hold on to their own private key. The IDP has its private key, the SP has its private key, but they need each other's public key to be able to validate signed messages from each other or potentially encrypt messages that they are sending to each other.
All right, awesome. So here we are, we're just creating the service provider again, just like a client that we're used to working with. And then, very simple, thankfully, we add SAML, we add the SAML service providers to the list, right? So identity server being a lot of middleware. That's essentially what we're doing right here. We're adding the middleware to be able to handle and work with SAML, to do all of the fun SAML things that we like doing as part of that spec. And that's pretty much it as far as being able to set up identity server, right? Let's take a small look over here at the service provider, and we'll go ahead and load this up. Again, a lot of hard-coded values. It is a demo after all. And essentially what we're doing right here is we're just adding some SAML 2 options to be able to say, hey, we do need to point to our identity provider. We need to know about our certificate, right, for that message decryption. And we can also scroll down a little bit. I do want to call out the login, logout endpoints. So just so you know, when we log in, we're going to go ahead and use our SAML 2 scheme. So again, we're going to use these options, everything that we set up right here. All right. So that's pretty much just the bare bones of all of that. And yeah, let's go ahead and run it, right? I'll hit F5 and we'll give this a second. Great. So everything is up and running.
You noticed Al being a bit nervous. That's proof that this is really live and not pre-recorded.
I wasn't sure how visible that would be. Okay, yes. Yes. So we do have our two windows right there for our two applications. And really quickly, just from a developer standpoint, I want to call out that we are using the dev localhost feature of .NET 10, just that way we could name our specific endpoints right here, which is very handy. And that's going to come in play in a minute when we're talking about our how individual calls are made. So it's going to make looking at that a little bit easier. But I do want to call out just something that I'm thankful. Actually, Anders, you had mentioned this to me previously. If you use that with SAML, so these certificates are specifically at the browser level. If you want to do this for your own local development, you do have to make a change to your hosts file. on your machine. So just heads up for that. All right. Now I'm going to minimize this window because we don't really need it. I'm going to pull up a really cool extension called SAML Tracer over here. And let's bring that over to the
And
right-hand side.
this is available for Firefox. There are similar things for Chrome, but the Firefox one is the more mature one. And
Yes,
if you want to
good
do
call.
SAML, install this because it's the thing that will allow you to understand the flows and see what's happening, as we'll see shortly.
Yes, yeah, because before I knew about this extension, again, thank you for telling me about that, Anders. Before I knew about it, I pulled up the dev tools and I had to do a lot of my own manual stuff to be able to understand what was going on, like what messages were being sent back and forth, all of that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and log in with SAML. We're going to do this a couple of times. I just want to show you what this looks like, right? Here's the basic stuff. So we click that login button. Notice that we are redirected to Identity Server, right? So we were originally on our service provider. Now we're at Identity Server. So we're going to sign in with Bob, one of those hard-coded users that we love using for our demos. And then we are signed in. We have all of our claims, all of our assertions, the information about this user, about Bob. So let's go ahead and log out. And notice on the right-hand side, we have a lot of messages going back and forth. So let's start over and actually look at each individual message, right? So we click that button, we are redirected. Now over here on the right-hand side with our extension, so we start by going to that login endpoint. And the very first thing that matters is we are redirected, as we love our redirects in Identity, right? They're just great. We we love all of them. Now the location right here where we are redirected to is to Identity Server. Okay, that's right. And we have this SAML request. So this means that the entire SAML request itself is in the URL of what's being passed around. And Anders, you were showing me this trick the other day of you can go ahead and take this URL. Now there's a couple of steps, right? If I'm remembering correctly, step one, I think.
So this is once more where OpenID Connect and Oauth got it right. If you want to pass a number of things over a query string, there is a mechanism called query string parameters that is perfectly fine to use. But in SAML 2, everything has to be XML. So the auth and request, as we'll see decoded shortly, is an XML. And putting XML on a query string doesn't really work, so you need to encode it. And then they realized that XML is verbose, so the length of the encoded XML became too large. The query string max length was hit. So what we see here is actually the XML, then UTF-8 encoded, and that UTF-8 encoded is deflate compressed, and the deflate compressed result is base64 URL encoded and goes on there. And that's why we need the SAML Tracer tool to be able to see things. So I guess you'll select the magic row now to allow us to see the auth and request.
Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to call out, if you were going to do this manually, you would go to some tool like this, samltool.com. You would first you would actually URL decode this thing.
Exactly, URL decode.
Yeah, decode it, and I would copy this, and then I would go over to, and I already have this one selected, right? Deflate it, and then you can see all of the. Oh nope. Wrong button. You would decode it. There we go. And then we would get all of our SAML too, right? You don't have to do that, thankfully. Again, that's a benefit of the extension that we have here. But I just wanted to call out, right? Those are the things that you would have to manually do. But we're going to go ahead and click on, right after we're, or as part of that redirect over here to Identity Server, right? We have our information, and this extension will go ahead and give us this cool SAML tab, which gives us that XML that is part of the URL query string. And most importantly, we get the ID of the request, right? So the ID is IDA 672, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, now I clicked around a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and clear this right here, just because it's like the networking tools, right, in the browser. It's grabbing all that information. So we'll go ahead and log in again. Click that login button. All right. And we have over on the right-hand side another set of redirects, right? So first of all, when we hit that login button right after typing in our credentials, we made a post, right? That was a form that posted back to Identity Server. And scrolling down, we got our 302, and we have our cookies being set. And so that redirect was over here. That went to our SAML/sign-in callback, and we can view this page again. Scrolling, and I do want to call out that this page, this is kind of a little bit of a weird one, right? Because that callback gave us a 200. That's not a redirect. So this is an internal thing where this actually returned a full page, which I was hoping we could actually see it. I didn't think about it before. But this request returned a full HTML page that internally, once loaded, it's going to go ahead and then just send this post request right here. So that's why I know, right? We're used to, hey, redirect. Well, why did we all of a sudden not have a redirect? All right, so that page.
The reason here is simply because, as we'll see the SAML message shortly, it's far too large to be able to compress. Even with the compressed stuff, it's far too large to put on a query string, and you need instead of post the data, because then it's in the body and you don't have the same limitations. OpenID Connect also has a form post mode if you do implicit flow, just for the same reasons.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So again, technical reason why something is going to be a little bit different, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Now that I know that, I understand exactly why that happens. That's good to know. Cool. So hey, we have a little SAML button over here on the right hand side. So let's look at what that actual SAML message was. And so this is the SAML. All right. There's a lot of stuff right there. I'm gonna open up VS Code right here just because I think it'll look a little bit better, right? Reading it from here, full screen, all of that stuff. So first of all, right, this is our original ID, right? IDA 672, et cetera, et cetera. And this was overall a success. And then the entire rest of this message is part of the assertion. Now, this is the part where, Anders, some of this gets a little bit fuzzy for me. So now you said that the assertion, this is the part specifically that is encrypted.
Not encrypted here. It's signed. In this case, it's signed. Okay. So the assertion it's a token. It's a token form like a JWT that can contain information about the user, attributes, etc., and the signature to integrity protected. Then the response is like an envelope. Actually, in SAML 2, you can sign the assertion, you can sign the response, or both. And I know that this will be configurable in IdentityServer in the future. Right now, it signs the assertion, but my preference is actually to sign the response to have everything integrity protected. But still, the assertion is integrity protected. And so we'll just walk through the important part of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have first the issuer, line 17, saying, hey, this was sent by IdentityServer IDP. And then we have a signature. That one thing I want to point out here is line 22 on the signature. The reference URI just saying what part of the XML document is actually protected by the signature. And you see the reference to _B59, which is line 12, the assertion. And I could go on for long about this, but it's part of the problem where why SAML 2 has had a somewhat questionable history of security is because the signature validation is complicated to get right. But for now, we can just see it's signed. So we can trust the contents of the assertion. So let's go down to line 39, where we have the name ID. That is the subject ID of the user. This is actually one thing where I think it would be great to have feedback. What name ID formats do you expect to see? And then we have the subject confirmation, which really just says this is a bearer token. And for WebSSO in SAML, that's the only allowed format. a lot of the chattiness of SAML 2 is because it was designed to be able to sort everything, and then the web single sign-on profile reduces it to a few things. And then we have some conditions saying how long is this valid, and this is valid for 10 minutes, which means the login handshake need to be completed within those 10 minutes. The session can be longer. We have an audience restriction saying that this assertion was created for ALS, test SAML to SP. And then further down on the bottom, we have some attribute statements where it actually says what this is where we finally have some information about the user. And behind all of these attributes and XML tags, etc., line 62 contains the actual information that is relevant. Bob Smith. Line 66, sorry. And the rest is, I mean, name format. I don't understand why it would be of interest to include in the SAML message an attribute saying that the name format doesn't describe the attribute. It describes that the attribute name on line 62 is an absolute URI.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea.
Sorry, let me zoom. Let me zoom in a little bit too, right? Because this is very verbose, right? There's a lot to it.
It is. It's horrible. It's horrible, but still, and as someone having spent a decade or more under the hood with SAML, as you said, I have the scars, and it's not the most simple protocol to implement. But once you have a working solution, it works. And I'm happy that Duende is now taking the step to adding this first party to IdentityServer, because then we can just use that. Or, I mean, I'll still do the client-side library that I do. I'm not abandoning that in any way, but this will be helpful for a lot of IdentityServer users.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So go ahead and minimize this. And that is essentially it. Sorry. Yes, we're back on the SAML provider. And that's what we're looking at over here. And that's essentially it, right? That is the demo code. That's everything that we were going to go ahead and show off. So we're going to go ahead and jump, I guess, to the Q&A section now that we are done with this. All right, so I do see a handful of questions. Let's see, that we already have. So let's go ahead. Let's see, is there a path to migrate from the component space SAML library? Let's see. Sorry, so right now, as far as migration and everything goes, we don't have a ton going on yet. So that is answers for the future, right? So like I said, everything we were showing off here, early bits, all that stuff, you know, things will be changing, especially on the developer experience side of things. Okay. All right, let's see. Next question that I'm seeing. What about a sustainsis.saml2.net 10?
That's a question for me. So the current version of Sustainsis SAML 2 2.11.0 targets .NET Standard something, which is perfectly compatible all the way up to .NET 10. There is another release coming probably fairly soon, but there are also a new version 3 being actively developed that will target .NET 10 from the start.
Okay, that's good to know. Great.
So I'm not abandoning this. On the contrary, I'm getting back to it and think that there is a future in SAML 2 because it's like a zombie that will never die.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Another question that I'm seeing in their notes. Let's see. Are there any plans for automatic config from service provider metadata at launch? So that is. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something, Anders?
Yeah, well, I have some insights that in the pull request build we currently have, no, it's not included. But as we've said, this is an early preview, so it's certainly part of the feedback that would be great to have. SAML2 metadata, as I mentioned, consuming SAML2 metadata is also closely related to CMD, client information metadata. That is a new OAuth standard. So I know that the development team at Duende, they are working now to see how can we unify the experience and see that if we add support to reading SAML2 metadata, that is very closely related to how to consume client-side metadata for OAuth clients as well, and see can we make it a unified experience. But I don't know if it will be included in first launch or not. If it's important to you, please let us know.
Yes, yeah, we're still taking comments and everything from everyone, and we have the slide right here as far as the Duende product insiders. If you want to go ahead and reach the development team specifically, the Duende product insiders is definitely one of the places to go ahead and do that. So back to the Q&A section. Let's see, we have another question. How does the SAML implementation being added to Identity Server compare to the current SAML-P offering from Rock Solid Knowledge?
Well, I've worked with both, or I've worked with the Rock Solid version in the past, and it does an excellent job of adding SAML as a plugin. But as a plugin, it had to work around a number of limitations because Identity Server itself didn't support SAML. And the new work that is now being done, it gives a first-hand developer experience where there will be a few changes inside Identity Server to make it dual protocol. And I think Rock Solid, they made a great work based on the premises that they had back then, but an integrated first-party solution always has the chance to be much more well integrated into the solution.
Mm-hmm. Great, yeah. So it sounds like the benefit there is the benefit with the Duende support is the developer experience is going to be a little bit easier, and that's because it's a direct change to the product itself.
Yeah.
Great. And then let's see, the final question that I'm seeing is, are you going to support artifact binding? So Andrews, I don't know if you have any comments on that.
So first of all, artifact binding corresponds to OpenID Connect flows. So in the demos we saw here, we did see the full assertion being passed in the browser to inspect. As a developer, I love that because I can inspect it. That is equivalent to the implicit flow in OpenID Connect, which is now deprecated because in OpenID Connect, we use the authorization code flow where all the interesting details are hidden on the back channel, and we just pass a reference or the authorization code of the browser. Artifact resolution is the SAML equivalent to authorization code flow, where if we would have used the artifact resolution binding in the demos, we would just have seen a simple code being passed through the browser, and the entire search and response is sent over a back channel. I don't know if it will be supported. I know that it has been, the SAML2 specification is huge, and there's obviously been a discussion inside of Duende on what to include in this first release or not. So once more, I think Duende product insiders and giving the team feedback, if artifact resolution is something you need, and especially if you need specific flavors of it, because I know that it's used in national EID solutions somewhere, in some places where there is some special requirements. Please let us know.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Please let us know. Any early feedback you have is always helpful to definitely to us. I mean, to any software, right? It's easier to make those changes a lot earlier before a product is actually released. So this has been a lot of fun. We've mentioned the Duende product and insiders. That is our you get access to some of the early bits. You get access to our Discord server. Again, we have that link on the bottom right-hand side if you want to go ahead and see some of the stuff a little bit early. Duende.link/insiders. All right, and this this is how it works, right? You apply to join, and afterwards, you get access to it, and you can see everything a little bit early. Not just SAML, right? Other things too. Other things that are coming to Duende Identity Server after they're announced. So, all right. And lastly, you know what? Hey, if you just want some other information, we have links. We have places where you can go ahead and get that information. Again, we are Duende, our website, duendesoftware.com. We're on social media, right? We've got our LinkedIn, we've got our Blue Sky right there. And if you want to find a bunch of other information, duende.link/community, that's probably where you want to go ahead and go first. So, Anders, I want to thank you so much for coming on here, answering a bunch of questions, not being too mean to me as far as whenever I say something incredibly wrong. So I'm always thankful for that, because we have an audience of people saying that.
And thanks for having me. I always appreciate getting a chance to talk about SAML. Thanks.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. And we'll go ahead and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.